So, the new and revised HEROES Act has been out for less than 24 hours, and I want to explain what is currently going on. Currently, House Democrats are wanting to schedule a vote on this bill sometime on Friday before the House goes on recess. Now, there is a problem with that. The problem is that Nancy Pelosi and Steven Mnuchin need to agree on this proposal first before moving forward. Now, many House Democrats understand this, but the problem is if they can't agree, if the Trump administration does not agree on a $2.2 trillion stimulus package, which is exactly what the proposal is, then they are kind of stuck. But House Democrats want this bill to be voted on because then it looks like they are doing something. However, it would be meaningless. There'd be no point because it would not pass. If President Trump does not okay this bill before it goes to a vote, it would just create more problems with Republicans. So those people, the media, YouTubers that keep saying a vote is good news, it is not. They are misinformed. That would be a bad situation unless President Trump and Steven Mnuchin give the okay first. If they have a verbal agreement first and prior to the vote, then that is good news. Now, again, a vote is great. Voting on a bill is great. However, it needs to be more of just a formality. We do not want a formality. We want an agreement first. So, this new HEROES Act, coupled with something Nancy Pelosi did over the weekend, could be big news, could be very important, and it could mean a second stimulus check to you and I very, very soon. So what happened over the weekend? Well, Nancy Pelosi over the weekend warned House Democrats to be ready to decide the next president of the United States if called upon. Now you're probably thinking, why would House Democrats be called upon to choose the next president of the United States? Well, and this is the reason why, and again, this is the reason why I believe this is really good news. The House could be called upon to choose the next president of the United States if neither Joe Biden or President Trump get the 270 required electoral votes. So, if that's the case, the House of Representatives will choose and decide the next president of the United States. This is the reason why currently negotiating in good faith with Steven Mnuchin on the revised HEROES Act is extremely important, because if President Trump says, no, I don't like $2.2 trillion, we're not going to accept that, but we'll come back with a $2 trillion package, this is where Nancy Pelosi could say, okay, we will agree on a $2 trillion package. Let's agree, let's move forward, let's sign this, let's get this passed. Let's get stimulus checks into the hands of American people. Let's get stimulus to businesses that are struggling. Let's get stimulus to everybody so that we can survive and get through this pandemic. By doing that and negotiating in good faith with President Trump, Steven Mnuchin, and the Trump administration, what Democrats are essentially doing is hopefully winning back some state delegations. Currently, it is a 26 to 22 split, being that Republicans hold the majority. So as of right now, most likely if it went to the House, Republicans would choose President Trump. However, this decision will come after the new Congress comes in. So that means right now, Nancy Pelosi is doing as much as she possibly can to try to control other Democrats to hopefully win back some of the state delegation. And again, that's extremely important moving forward, especially if President Trump says no to a $2.2 trillion stimulus package. Now, let's address this newly revised, the HEROES Act 2.2, if you will. I don't think they're really calling that, but let's address this. First off, it's an 87-page report. I was reading it last night. I read it again this morning. Now, in this 87-page report, there's a lot of information that I found, a lot of good pieces of legislation. However, there are a handful of pieces. There are a handful of items that I expect are going to be changed or removed based on what Republicans want. Now, after reading a couple of articles this morning, a few different reports, these are the things that many are expecting to be changed. Not completely gotten rid of, but just changed. There is a clause in the newly revised HEROES Act that says there's $120 billion for restaurant grant money. However, why are restaurants receiving grant money when the other businesses have to go and apply for the PPP funds? Why is that the case? And in that case, restaurants get $120 billion, and what's supposed to be left over from the original PPP fund is only $130 billion. So we got restaurants with $120 billion and all other businesses $130 billion. Most likely what is expected is they will most likely take that $120 billion for the restaurant grants and take maybe $120 or $100 billion and put that into the PPP fund. It just makes more sense that way. However, maybe this is just the way Democrats want it. We don't know. Hopefully we'll get more clarification on that as the days move on. So that's the first thing that many are expecting is going to change. Not really the funds or where they go, but based on the writing and make it a little bit more detailed so we know exactly who's getting it, where is it going, how do you qualify and stuff like that. Also, there's $249 billion for health and human services. Now, based on a few different reports I was reading just this morning, some are saying that it would make more sense to do $125 billion now, so break it down into about three different payments, three different installments. First, we have $125 billion now, and then the next two installments would be contingent on the pandemic moving on. So if for some reason we do not go into the pandemic ends in, let's say, March, I hope it does. I hope it doesn't go that long, but most are expecting it will. It will go into next summer. And if that's the case, $125 billion would go to health and human services today, and the other two installments, which would come out to right about $50 billion or $62.5 billion in each installment, those would be handed out later on. So let's say we get through January, February, and March, and we're still in the pandemic, then 62.5 would go into that. And let's say we're still in this pandemic, still in a state of emergency in, let's say, June, well, the other 62.5 billion would get handed out then as well. So it's the same amount. It's only they're just breaking it down into a little different. So you get installments as opposed to everything up front. Another one, and this is the big one, is $438 billion for state and local government funding. This has always been an issue between Nancy Pelosi and Republicans. Is Nancy Pelosi wanted $915 billion for state and local governments, and Republicans, specifically Senate Republicans, they only wanted to give about $150 billion, but they'd go up to $300 billion. Well, Nancy Pelosi has in here $438 billion for state and local governments. If you remember from the Problem Solvers Caucus proposal, they were at 370 permanent guaranteed funds, and then 130 on top of that. That would be an automatic booster if the pandemic worsened. So we're not too far away from that. What many are predicting, or these few different reports are expecting, is the Steve Mnuchin and the Trump administration would say, let's have a quarter reserved for the hardest hit states. Let's not just give out, and I believe it's like $238 billion just goes to the states, and $179 billion goes to local governments. Well, why don't we keep a quarter of that, and that quarter would only go to the hardest hit states? For example, New York was hit very hard, California was hit very hard. They still got wildfires. Okay, Florida, Arizona, Texas. Okay, so a lot of these funds, a quarter of that, would only go to the hardest hit states. So we'll make it fair. We'll give it out to everybody, all the different states. We'll all have some funding. However, only the hardest hit states will receive the leftover quarter percent. So, or 25%. Another thing that some are expecting is going to happen is the unemployment. $600 per week. President Trump, Mark Meadows, Steve Mnuchin, Mitch McConnell have all stated that they are not opposed to $600 per week in the federal unemployment boost, but what they are opposed to is people that are on unemployment making more on unemployment than they would normally make if they worked their regular job. That is the issue. So the way they would solve that is $600 per week, but not a penny more than 100% of your previous wage. And they're doing this because they feel it's a disincentive to get back to work. And it honestly is. Why would somebody want to go back to work and risk their life and go and get up early and drive to work and do all that stuff they would normally do when they could make more money at home, either sitting on the couch, helping their kids with schoolwork or what have you. So this would be a little bit of an incentive to go back to work. So we'll see what happens there. Now, more great news about this proposal is it was revealed only minutes before Nancy Pelosi and Steve Mnuchin were expected to get on a call. So, based on a couple reports that I was reading just a little bit ago, this call was well received and had some very positive news and progress for actually forward progress. So, it's good news. We're seeing something. Now, do we have an agreement just yet? I don't know just yet, right? I've been shooting this video for the past 15 minutes. I did research on this for another hour or so. So as of right now, do we have an agreement? I doubt it. Hopefully we do in the next coming days. And as soon as we have an agreement, I promise you, probably within the hour, I will give you a complete update. So the only thing we wait right now is how close are we to a deal? And again, we are only days away from airlines potentially laying off tens of thousands of workers. We are days away from the House going on recess, and we are just days away from the government stopgap bill having to be passed by the Senate before we see a government shutdown. So do me a favor, if you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and smash that thumbs up button. But let's do yourself a favor today as well. Make sure you click that subscribe button down below so that I can keep you updated on all the stimulus negotiations. So again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.